Hello, everyone. This is Heart Healing Conversations with Dawn and Janna. Today, we are going to talk about something that I don't think most of us realize leads to grief, and that is our childhood and the things that we had hoped, we had expected, we had dreamed that would be different than how they turned out. And I know I can speak to this because I had many things happen in childhood that I had really wished would be different. And it wasn't until at the age of 30 I found myself divorced that I started looking back during my own healing journey at all those things that had weighed heavy on my heart that I'd been carrying around from childhood. There was growing up with a father and a stepfather who were addicts, alcoholics. And then I had a abusive relationship, my first romantic relationship in high school. So, as I started like I said, my healing journey and I became a grief recovery method specialist, I realized that I had carried all these things from my childhood into my marriage, which made it almost impossible to have a healthy relationship. Hence, we ended up divorced. But I think that a lot of us miss um, that there's things that go on as we're growing up that deeply hurt our hearts. And we don't know how to process those. Most of us aren't given the tools because our parents didn't have the tools. And so Jana and I wanted to have a conversation about this today and just talk about how this leads to grief and how it can affect our entire life if we don't start healing.
Yeah, honestly, I think this is one of the things I hear the most often when I talk to clients about grief, is, asking about things with childhood or, hey, how's your relationship with mom and dad? And everybody just immediately jumps on the defense of, oh no, I had a great childhood. Mom and dad did the best that they could. I think there's this fear factor that is kind of ingrained with us that we're not supposed to talk about anything bad that happened to us because we're children. We're supposed to be, we continue to grow and we forget things and we move on, and really we don't. We need the same space as kids to be able to understand feelings, because first, as a child, a lot of us don't even know what we're feeling, to be honest, and then how to process it and how to move forward with those feelings. And so I know that's been one of the biggest things for my healing journey. Was I was one of those people. No, no, nothing like that ever happened. I was, I was a good kid. We had a good family, nothing. Um, to pull that stuff forward and to heal it brought new dimension to not just my healing journey, but how I move forward into this world, handling kids, my own especially, but all of the kids that I see and all of the stuff that they're dealing with. I've even had a couple, nieces and nephews that I've talked with about some of this grief recovery stuff. And it's just so appalling to hear from their eyes and their perspective what they're seeing in the world, whether it be from, other family members or just the stuff they see and hear at school all the time, and they're not allowed to talk about. Like,
Mhm.
we have so much to unpack.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, I don't blame our parents for not having the tools because they were raised by parents that also didn't have
Yep.
tools. And like you and I talk about all the time, it's sad that we are given tools to deal with physical health issues, but not those things that hurt our heart emotionally. And so I think this is one of the gifts that we can give the younger generations is teaching them how to navigate painful things in life, whether it's their best friend called them a name or a little kid pushed them at school or something's going on at home, the parents are fighting, whatever it is. We need to start educating our kids, giving them these really important tools so they know how to navigate life moving
Yeah.
forward. And I love that the Grief Recovery Institute wrote a book called When Children Grieve. And that is for parents, educators, people at church that hold Sunday school groups, anyone that has a lot of contact with children. And it teaches them tools to help their children navigate some of the really difficult times and those difficult emotions. Because unfortunately, if we don't teach children how to be emotionally honest, most of them shut down. Like when
Mm.
they're little kids, they talk about everything, right? But then sometimes they learn, whether it's at home or school or church or from their friends, that you're not supposed to talk about those painful feelings. And so they stuff them. And that's absolutely not helpful long term. And so I think it's really important to teach kids these things. And I love, like I said, that we have a book that helps adults with, helping their kids navigate life. I know when my son was young, I hadn't been introduced to grief recovery yet. So I didn't have these tools. And in our home, we're just getting ready to launch our youngest. And he's had these tools for the last 10 years. And it's amazing how different he is from my oldest child because he's learned how to be emotionally honest. He's learned how to navigate really difficult things. In fact, he came home from a camp on Saturday and he was telling us about how he was helping a girl that had gone through some difficult things. She got a call from home with some really painful news, and he helped her navigate that. And he sat up and talked to her and encouraged her to be emotionally honest. And this is the difference. Our kids can have a different life when we teach them these tools. And I know that you've been using this with your own kids, Jana.
Absolutely. It's such a game changer to allow them the space to be honest, not just with themselves, but with us as adults. We're not perfect and we do still make mistakes. And another big thing for us is to be able to own those mistakes with our children and apologize for them. Like, I'm sorry I did this. I'm sorry I hurt your feelings. Let's talk about it. Because I know a lot of us come from a space where that wasn't okay either. If something happened, it was usually a yelling, screaming match, and you did something wrong, you go to your room and think about this. And, we weren't allowed that same kind of care and compassion. And I can see just a huge difference in how, my kids navigate versus some of the other kids that we've been around. Like, I've even had, my middle son, he's like, Mom, some of those kids are just, they're so mean, they're so rude. It's scary to know that that's the kind of world we're living in. And it's so important for us to be able to get this kind of knowledge out there so that more people can find that healthy relationship, not only with themselves, but with the rest of the world, so that they can move through life healing and continuing to help others.
So, Jana, I know you probably get people saying to you quite often, because I do. Well, that's the past. That was my childhood. They did the best they could. I'm just going to move forward. And so, what do you say to people who come back with that comment? Because, we all know that so many of the struggles that we have today are partly because of what we didn't heal from our childhood. So, how do you address that with
I think
individuals?
one of the biggest things for me is I like to kind of throw it back a little bit and ask, well, why don't you give me like three examples of memories from your childhood? And when people usually come back with some of those memories, it's an eye opener because they're like, oh, well, this first memory is, when I got picked on in school. Or the first
Hmm.
memory that I can think of with my grandma, was when, her and my grandpa were fighting. Or so there's usually some sort of a negative side to it. And it does kind of instantly change their mindset, like, oh, maybe everything wasn't okay. And
Hmm.
it opens up a little bit so that they feel a little bit safer talking about some of that. And I know, again, many try to shut it off immediately because, like you said, we're not supposed to talk about that. We're supposed to leave it in the
Right.
past. But having those gentle reminders of, yeah, I know it's going to hurt right now to hold this conversation, but if I can help walk you through this and show you how to feel what you should have felt then,
Hmm.
you're going to feel the weight just lift off of your shoulders and feel better after you're finished holding this conversation.
Hmm. Yeah, I
There's
agree.
people
And
that shut down, of course, but there's also those that are like, okay, I'm willing to give it a chance. And you can just see the relief come from them and the big sigh that they feel. And you ask, and they're like, wow, it does feel better. That's crazy.
hmm well, I think one of the problems is that some of the things that happen in our families feel shameful to us.
Hmm.
And so there's these family secrets that we don't want to talk about, that we've been told we're not supposed to talk about. And so we just push them into the corners of our heart and shut the door. Hopefully they'll go away. And they don't. And, absolutely 100% of everyone I work with comes to me with a specific hurt, grief,
Hmm.
loss. And then as they start sharing, they start talking about their childhood. And, we always have to circle around because it's really important for all of us to know that all those things from our childhood are still affecting us today. And until we take a look at them and heal them, they're going to affect every relationship we have. And I
I
think
think,
people feel very overwhelmed with that. But like, I know from my personal experience, and I think you know from yours, once you start looking at those things and healing that pain, it does lift a huge weight off your shoulders. Your life feels different.
yeah, I think a lot of family estrangements could honestly be stopped using a lot of these tools because on this healing journey where you allow yourself the space to grieve all of those things that have happened to you, you also gain such an inside knowledge on how much, your family didn't know in how to take care of themselves and what they were dealing with. And it gives you a different sense of peace knowing that they didn't have this kind of help for themselves. And so they were doing the best that they could. And you can't really fault them. Yes, we have the opportunity to say, that's your sadness, that's your problem. I'll let you deal with that. I can't deal with that. But at the same time, I think it lets us navigate a little bit differently how we confront them, how we talk to them, and how we just at least try to keep those relationships going even if they are kind of on the rocks. It's a, hey, at least how are you doing? I want to know for my sake that you are
Hmm.
still doing well and you're okay, even if you don't want to talk to me. Um,
Yeah.
the hope is always still there that by showing them your healing process, they're going to ask questions and hopefully jump in on their own too.
Hmm. And I also want to just insert here, we never condone someone's behavior. We may understand it on some level, but don't condone it. And we are not ever saying that you need to try and be in any type of relationship that's
Right,
abusive. We want you to
right.
be safe. We're talking about relationships where there's just some tension,
Hmm.
there's a little bit of estrangement because we don't get along or there's past hurts, but anything that's abusive, that's a different conversation because obviously we all need to be safe.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, it really breaks my heart when people are holding so much from their past, their childhood especially, that they haven't known they need to heal because it does continually affect their lives. I mean, it certainly did mine until I was able to see what was going on and start addressing it. Because the thing is like when we enter relationships, we don't want to bring all that baggage in because it affects how we see our friend, our partner, a family member, how we interact with them. And so until we're willing to take that time to look at that relationship and heal, then we're going to keep bringing that forward. And, people ask, well, that feels so overwhelming. And how do I do that? Well, I think the first thing that I know I would suggest, and I think you would too, Jana, is to be emotionally honest. Because we want, like you said earlier in the conversation, to say, well, that was the past. They did the best they could. Well, how did you really feel? We tend to, in some ways, protect those we love and pretend it wasn't as bad as it really was.
Yeah, emotional honesty is honestly one of the most important tools I think anybody can take out of any of the conversations that we have, both with
Mhm.
yourself and with everybody that you're talking to. I know it can be uncomfortable at times because when you bring up emotions, people run. They don't want to hear them, they don't want to deal with them. It's a taboo type topic, but I think you'll find you feel better, like being honest. There's a weight coming off of you, and you find your circle of people that will be there for you and help you through those times when you're honest with them because they'll actually, I'm so sorry you're going through this. What can I do to help you? Those are the kind of people that you want in your life, and that's what you want to create your circle and make every day feel better for you, finding more joy in your life. And so that emotional honesty, again, not only with yourself but with everybody else, especially with your children.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we want to create change for the future. We want to give our children tools to live differently than maybe we have. And that doesn't mean we've had bad lives. It just means we want them to be healthy. And
Mhm.
that's not just physically healthy, that's mentally, emotionally, spiritually. We want them to be healthy and well-rounded and be able to hold the relationships that are dear to their hearts.
Mhm.
So, I think I know that you do this in your own family, and I've been noticing it in ours as well. Is there's so much healing that happens just sitting down and having a conversation as a family,
Yep.
because instead of everybody go behind their closed doors and hold resentments and anger and fear, we have those conversations, those difficult conversations, sitting down in front of each other and figuring out how to navigate those difficult times versus just pushing them under the rug.
Absolutely. And it's a complete game changer, especially when I know in my childhood, a lot of those kind of conversations that happened, even in the open, didn't turn out to be necessarily healthy conversations. It was more of a lecture of what you did wrong 500 ways and how you need to fix yourself and those kind of things. And so changing that connotation of, oh my gosh, you were wrong, you did this, you did that, into a learning experience helps them see all sides of something that's happened and show them that you're not a bad person, like you're not failing the world if you did something wrong. Like, I don't want you to hold that negative connotation. I want you to understand and move forward knowing that you can still be whatever it is you want to be. Just let's do this a little differently next time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such a beautiful reminder. So, Jana and I are going to do something a little different moving forward. So, this is our 25th episode, which I'm super excited about because when we started, it was like, how are we going to launch this? I'm not ready for this. And we just started having conversations because for both of us, we really want to create some shifts in the world. We want people to feel um, like they're not alone. We want them to start working on their own healing because it does create a ripple effect in the world. So we've recorded 25 conversations. We've decided to move this conversation onto Substack, which will then shoot it out to Apple and Spotify and YouTube. So things are going to look a little bit different, and we're going to take a very short break while we convert this to Substack. But we're really excited because up to this point, this conversation has only been on YouTube, and we want to get it out to more people in the world. And we'd love for you guys to share it if you find that it resonates with you, if it's helpful, if you know someone who's going through some type of transition or grief in their life, share it with them and see if, it helps them move forward as well. The other thing is, we would love for our audience to give us suggestions, things that they are going through in their life or things they'd like us to talk about. So, you can put that in the comments underneath the show notes. That would be super helpful. But just know we're not going away and things might look a little bit different, but we're still going to have the conversations and we're also going to start bringing on some guest speakers. So I hope you look forward to what our future conversations are going to hold.
Thanks for listening, and everybody.
Take care. Talk to you soon.